What's going on? It's your host with the most real Taylor Nicole, back at it again with another episode for y'all. Listen, today's episode and next week's episode, just to give you a heads up, it's going to be a little bit different. Just a wee bit. Because these two episodes are going to be more documentary based. It's not going to be your typical movie, although you can still classify it as a documentary movie, but it's going to be a tad bit different. But before we jump into today's episode, I do want to say, once again, thank you to everyone who's been tuning in for your girl week after week, whether you're watching the podcast, watching Black History, or watching the mini-series moments and episodes or whatnot, or the skits. For a minute, I thought my headset was blinking. But as we've discussed in the past, there's still no new updates on when I'm actually going to release Anguish Season 2. Kind of had some bumps in the road, life been lifing and whatnot, and kind of mapping out other plans to help generate content and help generate my ability to become more publicly visible on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and wherever else you see me posting my things at. Just kind of working on some plans. Being in the field that I'm in now, being in the new decade of ages, if you will, you start to kind of realize what life really means to you. And I think I've come to the conclusion that life to me means going after what I want to do. And just understanding that it takes work to get there. So some of the things that I feel like was considered work towards what I've been trying to get to, starting to look like maybe I haven't done enough to push myself further. So they say in this lifetime it takes coaching, skill, repetitiveness, and learning to achieve a goal and achieve a dream. So with that being said, I unfortunately have to pay to play, is what I learned. You got to pay to play. So that means paying for whatever it takes to get to where you want to be. So if that's acting classes, coaching classes, film school, whatever it is, it sounds like that's what I got to do. I was scared to take that leap and go back to school for filming, to take acting classes, to really invest in myself, because I'm not gonna lie, I thought I couldn't do it at first. I was like, nah, you good at writing, but you don't really have the talent outside of writing. But I prove to myself every day that I can do more. And my podcast is what showed me I can do more. It's what showed me that I have the ability and capability of doing more. I just have to want it, and I have to do it in order to get more and to do more. So just wanted to say that before we got into it. And really, that was an inspiring moment from actually watching these two. It's a 2-part series. So you're going to get part 1 this week, and then you'll get part 2 next week. But it's from both aspects, both male and female sides, if you will. So just watching that documentary really opened my eyes to what everyone before me did to get to where they are. And it kind of opened my eyes to I can't be afraid to take risk. I have to be a risk taker. 100%. I can't hold back on my risk taking because I'm afraid of a financial loss. A lot of them took financial losses in this lifetime, and they bounced back. Not saying I'll make stupid financial decisions, just saying I can't be afraid to pay to play. So that's, like I said, these documentaries open my eyes to some shit. So with that being said, let's jump in right into today's episode, which, as most of you should know, it's episode 50. I am 10 episodes away, technically 9 episodes away from episode 60. My 1 year mark on YouTube is August 2nd. And I really truly was hoping to be at 500 subs by August 2nd. But realistically, after doing this for so long, I see that it's not as easy as you think it is. Just setting up a camera and talking and editing, putting hours into these things doesn't mean that you're going to snap into position. So it just makes me more motivated, makes me more hungry uh to go after shit. That's what this does. But anyway, like I said, let's jump into episode 50, y'all. This is episode 50. The movie, the documentary, the film, whatever you want to call it that we're talking about, is number one on the call sheet, part one. This runs for an hour and 37 minutes. Its release date was March 28th, 2025. The director of this film and also one of the interviewees in this film was Reginald Hudlin. The movie styles a documentary, as I mentioned, all up and through here. You can watch this on Apple TV if you have Apple TV. It's an Apple TV original. Typically I'd give you guys the cast and the crew as, this person played that person. These are these people being these people in the documentary. So, without further ado, instead of me giving you the actors that spoke, I want to give you the interview and then give you the person. But before I do that, once again, I truly appreciate any and everyone who's watching and listening, no matter what platform you're on. I thank you and I appreciate it. So, let's jump right into explaining the documentary, if you will. This shouldn't really be too hard to explain, but some of the things were very potent out there and just kind of resonated with me, if you will. So listen, the documentary is basically about a documentary based on being a black man in Hollywood as a lead, if you will, the leading black man, the star, the it guy, the who's who guy, but in a black man's perspective and what it took for them to get there. It means basically to be one of the greatest black actors as far as men go, and being tremendous pioneers in the business, the real movie stars, the real top of the food chain stars, and the real pioneers in Hollywood for black men in Hollywood, in America, really. It's discussing their artistic success, their financial success, and being able to exist within inside the business of Hollywood. Before it gets to individually interviewing each gentleman, and there was a total of 19 men that they interviewed, you get to see a few of the men pre starting of the documentary, discussing and just talking and showing some clips of what they've discussed throughout the entirety. So, what does it mean to be number one on the call sheet from a black man's perspective in Hollywood, basically? So, one of the first people they interviewed was Mr. Lawrence Fishburne. Mr. Fishburne is known for movies such as The Matrix, Boys in the Hood, What's Love Got to Do with It, John Wick, Apocalypse Now, and Deep Cover. Mr. Fishburne mentioned in his interview that at the age of 14 or 15, he was in Apocalypse Now, if I'm not mistaken. And he spent several scenes and several takes attempting to get the scene down packed where he was supposed to be as experienced in the sexual world. So I guess it was a sexual conversation that they were having, and he had mentioned that he had never been intimate, so he didn't really know what he was talking about, right? But what started the progress for him was because Martin Sheen had took him to the side and basically gave him the confidence booster that he was looking for. And Lawrence said that to him is what it meant to be number one on the call sheet, meaning to understand that it took more than just being the it guy and the show up guy for your role, but to boost the confidence of everyone else around you, to strap everybody else on your back and drag them along with you. That's what Lawrence said it meant to be number one on the call sheet to him. And he said he thinks that Martin Sheen helped save his career with just that one conversation that they had. The second interview they had was with Marlon Wayans, who's known for many of things, but some of which is Requiem for a Dream, Air, Scary Movie, White Chicks, Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. Sorry, I had to fix that. He discussed about survival instincts in Hollywood, basically. He compared his upbringing to his upbringing in Hollywood. So his upbringing as a child to his upbringing in Hollywood. Now, granted, Marlon is one of the very few that came from a talented background of brothers and sisters that were already breaking into that industry. So Marlon kind of had a little bit of a blueprint to feed off of and walk through. But he still experienced what most actors and actresses of the Black community experience when trying to break into that mold, because it's not always the same for each one. Everything is always different. So, and I'm going to go into even more of the conversations in a minute, but I kind of want to bring out all 19 of the men right in front of you and then kind of go deep into conversation with you moving forward. Now, the third gentleman that they interviewed was Mr. Don Cheadle, who's known for many other things as well, but most popularly known for Iron Man 2, Boogie Nights, Ocean's 11, Hotel Rwanda, which I did an episode on Hotel Rwanda. If you haven't watched it, you probably should go watch it. I'll post it somewhere right here. Traffic, Devil in a Blue Dress. Don Cheadle opened up about how Hollywood only works on focusing on what hasn't been told and needs to be told as long as they can ride it out. So in other words, if you got a story, whether it's black or whether it's white, and it hasn't been told yet, and you can feed off of it for a long time, that's what Hollywood does. It feeds off of that same storyline as long as it can until it can't no more. It's like squeezing juice out of a turnip. That's what it's like for Hollywood. And once they can't squeeze it anymore, they're out of here. Matter of fact, a better comparison is squeezing juice out of a lemon. Let's go with that. Well, after they interviewed Don Cheadle, and that's just, like I said, just a snippet. After they interviewed Don Cheadle, they also interviewed an entertainment attorney by the name of Matthew Johnson, and he kind of just talked about the legal aspects of being in the industry, if you will. But the fourth interview was Mr. Jamie Foxx, who's known for multiple things: acting, comedian, musician, and so forth. But he's most commonly known for movies such as Any Given Sunday, Dreamgirls, Ray, Django Unchained, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Collateral, Just Mercy. Jamie Foxx talks about, he opens up talking about his family and where they come from and how the things that they did set him up for the opportunities that he has, dating back from slavery. He also discussed the reason why he has 40 acres of land that all of his family lives with him in. And Jamie basically says if it wasn't for his family, he would never have the opportunity to be first on the call sheet, right? That's what Jamie opens up with, right? Well, after Jamie, we get the fifth interview, which is Kevin Hart, who's known for multiple things as well, but most commonly certainly known for Central Intelligence, Ride Along, Jumanji, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Think Like a Man, The Upside. When he opens up discussing that most of these male actors and comedians would not have made it where they were if it wasn't for the Denzels, the Morgans, the Sams, the Wesleys, the Keenans, the Martins, the Eddies, and the Richards and the Sidney Portiers, for clarification. He talks about that, right? And then he talks about some more things, but once again, I want to introduce each gentleman to you. We got about 13 more left to get to. But when he mentioned Sydney, one thing that I liked about the documentary is once he mentioned Sydney, the love that everyone had for Sydney, every actor that had a comment about Sydney, they popped it there. Denzel Washington talked about Sydney, um, and he said Sydney would love to. Hold on. Hold on, y'all. I don't know why that's right there. That threw me off. Sorry. Something just threw me off, and I was like, what the heck? What the hecky? What the helly? What the helly on? Anyway, um, so when they brought up Sidney Portier, like I said, Denzel talked about how Sidney would always talk about guys like James Edwards, Canada Lee, Paul Robinson, Hattie McDaniels, and even Jamie Foxx showed Sidney some love and respect that Sidney had brought to the acting world. How he had molded the black narrative, if you will, for a black man. There was a point in time where Sidney did a film where a white man was supposed to slap him and he was supposed to stand there and take the slap. And Sidney told them, I will not sit here and take a slap from a white man and let y'all have it on the air. Sorry, I thought about to sneeze. Um, so Sidney had it in his contract that if that white man slapped him, he'd slap him back and they're still going to air it just like that. They're not going to clip it. They're going to change it. They're going to make it look like Sidney was accepting this disrespect, this level of disrespect from a white man. Sidney wasn't having that, and they upheld that contract, or they wasn't going to be able to air that film. So after hearing that, you get to get another interview from another lawyer, another entertainment lawyer, which is Nina Shaw, and she discussed about the hardships with dealing with the black entertainment business, and being in the attorney fields for that level. Um, but then after Kevin Hart, and I jumped around because my brain mentioned Sidney Poitier and it made me think of this. After Kevin's interview, though, they did interview John Boyega, who's known for things such as The Woman King, Attack the Block, Pacific Rim Uprising, Breaking, Detroit, Star Wars, and so many other things out here. But he also came in and he talked about Sidney. He talked about how much Sidney meant to the film industry for him, and how if it wasn't for men like Sidney, it wouldn't have resonated or populated the ability for him to go as far as he did and to see the things he did. He also talks about how it was an honor for him to be able to take his mother and father on a red carpet so they can see that their son had made it. He also discussed that not only did Sidney show him that love, but Denzel showed him that same love, which made it so much easier for him to walk into the game when your peers are showing you that love. And although Denzel is a seasoned vet in the game, and you would say that's not necessarily his peer, but it is his peer. Because as long as Denzel remains acting in this world and hasn't retired, it is always going to be his peer. Well, after they interviewed John, they ended up interviewing Michael B. Jordan. Michael B. Jordan is known for Creed, Black Panther, Fruitvale Station, and Just Mercy, and also a whole host of other things as well. When Michael comes in, he talks about the struggles that all actors share. He talks about the big impact that they all endured with trying to break a mold. However, he also mentions that if it wasn't for guys that I just mentioned, Mr. Sidney Canada Lee, Paul Robertson, Martin, Eddie, Richard, and so forth and so forth. If all those men before him did not set a standard, break a mold, and open a door, they would have been still struggling to find the goddamn key, basically. And you get to the point where you start to realize that all of these, out of these first 7 interviews, you start to hear the same repetitiveness of how in the black industry, Hollywood was very selective and still is very selective, to be honest, on who and what gets in. And you just hear the consistency of struggle between a black man and a black woman in that field, in that industry. In that industry, black people were the first to be blamed if shit goes south. In Hollywood, if shit goes south, blame the black guy. That's it. Well, after they interviewed Michael, they also interviewed my boy Quentin Tarantino, who was known for several things: Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, Pulp Fiction, Django, The Hateful Eight. The list goes on and on and on about this guy, Quentin Tarantino. That's my dog. That's my boy. And one thing that I loved about Quentin is always very outspoken, but Quentin mentioned, and he stood on it, that he didn't understand how you can see people like this gentleman named Cleavon who starred in these great films that did numbers and still couldn't get a job. And he blatantly stated it. It's racism in Hollywood. He flat out, it's racism. He was like, there's no other way around it, which is why I believe that when he did Pulp Fiction, he kept Samuel Jackson in mind for that character. But that's not what this one's about. So then we get to interview what I call interview 8, which is, as I mentioned earlier, Reginald Herdlin, who was the next interview. He's known for being a director, producer for movies like House Party, Sydney, Boomerang, Marshall, Black Godfather, and also Django Unchained. He just kind of talks about, how Hollywood would just pick the it black person back in the day. Like, you're going to be the it black person for this demographic, this group, this age range. Like, they would pick the it black person. That's what it was like that back then. It was, you're going to be this black person for the black men, you're going to be this black woman for the black women, and this is the category that you're going to fall under. And he mentioned in the 70s, you started to notice a breakout of a plethora of black people that were in the same field. You got Superfly, you got Shaft, you got my brain is slipping on me because you got Prince, you got Eddie Murphy, you got all of these different, Michael Jackson, you got all these different black men who are shining in similar lights at the same time. And by the time the 80s and 90s hit, it really was flourishing. The black community was starting to become a continuation of more than just one black person in its genre. And in his thing, one thing that I noted that most people probably didn't catch is he made a comment that Eddie actually became bigger than Prince. I'm gonna leave it there though. Keep moving. Right after his interview, they interviewed Eddie Murphy, who's known for things such as 48 Hours, Trading Places, Boomerang, Beverly Hills Cop, Shrek, Coming to America, and the list goes on and on for Eddie. Dr. Dolittle. The point is, it goes on and on for Eddie. Eddie talks about how he was approached with the opportunity to play Alex Haley in his biopic, if you will. And Eddie said when he seen Sydney for the first time, he mentioned it to Sydney, and he said Sydney told him that what was it exactly? I forget the exact words, but he basically told him that you're a star, in your own journey, in your own lane. So don't fuck with that shit. In other words, that's not your lane. Don't do that. Stay in your lane. And I don't think it was I don't think it was a dig or anything like that at Eddie. I think that was just Sydney's way of telling him, stay where you are, stay where you're going, because you're on the right path. And I think that's what Eddie felt that he meant by that too, because Eddie didn't take offense to it. Now, after they interviewed Eddie, they interviewed my boy Will Smith, who's most commonly known for things such as Men in Black, I Am Legend, Independence Day, Ali, Bad Boys, King Richard, Enemy of the State, and the list goes on and on for Will Smith as well. Now Will talks about how Eddie Murphy was the man he emulated the very most throughout of his life and his career. Um, he really followed and studied Eddie and was very embraced and impacted by Eddie's work mentality and ethic, that where he kind of emulated some of it. Um, and right after they interviewed Will, they interviewed Martin Lawrence, who's also known for things such as Bad Boys, Big Mama's House, Blue Streak, Boomerang, House Party, and The Black Knight, and the list goes on and on for Martin as well. You got the Martin Lawrence show. But in Martin's interview, he talked also about how Eddie is someone that he kind of, you could say, I guess, idolized at the least, maybe looked up to in a way when it came to his approach to comedy and acting, if you will. His biggest influence, though, was Richard Pryor, which I'm not surprised. He said one thing that initiated the fire in him was when he got to do the movie Life with Eddie, because this is someone that I kind of idolize, that I kind of look up to. So to get the opportunity to do a film with somebody and it turns into this big boulder of gold was insane. Now before, actually, yeah, let me do this real quick. So they go into a little bit about Eddie after this, because this is they kind of go in between where they're giving love and recognition to these men. So at one point it breaks in and it lets us know that Eddie Murphy basically knew he always wanted to be famous since he was a little boy. He knew he wanted to, and at the age of 19 is a recording of him telling them that he's given himself 2 years to take off and be worldly known, and he did just that. He went to SNL first, blew up, and then Raw. He turned 21 when he did Raw, or was it Delirious? I think it was Raw. Whichever one he wore the red suit in, I think that was Raw, if I'm not mistaken. But the point is, he did SNL, he did his stand-ups, Raw, and Delirious, and he just took off. Eddie just took off. He said, that people was trying to give him advice that never had been in his shoes, so they didn't really know what to say to him, because none of them experienced the level of fame that he experienced at the age that he's experiencing it in. So it's kind of hard for them to give him advice. And he said someone had Larry Holmes come and talk to him, and Larry Holmes just literally all he said was, "Don't forget where you come from." And Eddie's like, "Okay, nigga, whatever." And he said the funniest advice he got was from James Brown. James Brown told him that if you got $1 million, then you should go bury it in your backyard. And Eddie was like, "Well, what if I die?" Ain't nobody. He said the government won't find it. James Brown had to be the most funniest musician out there, walking and talking. We also find that Eddie's people reached out to Reginald about Boomerang, and he basically states that Eddie supported the Black vision. Eddie just basically supported Reginald in the vision that he had for the movie and what he saw. Everything that he wanted, Eddie made sure that it got done to support that Black vision. One thing that they showed was when Eddie got interviewed by Jay Leno, he basically had told Jay Leno that it was interesting that when Boys in the Hood was done, no one cared about the fact there wasn't a white lead in Boys in the Hood. But when Boomerang got done, they were highly upset that the vast majority of the cast, all of the leading and main characters and supporting characters, were black, and white America was upset about it. And he didn't say it, but I know he was thinking that's some bullshit, because y'all okay with us being in the dumps, poor and sad, but when we making money, y'all confused. And he did say, I think he said on the interview that he, it's crazy how y'all okay with seeing us poor, but as soon as we're running shit, y'all want to know where the white people are. You know, um, basically, it's okay for black people to be struggling and gangsters, but not okay for us to be business owners in moves and live in movies and living our best life. Which is why I wrote the movie that I wrote, and I know I'm gonna get an opportunity to film that movie, direct that movie, and get it on the big screen, because I know I will. It still got a little bit of what you not struggle, but it got some reality in my movie. It definitely still does. So Mr. Reginald Hurtland, Tyler Perry, Spike Lee, Denzel Washington. If any of y'all see this, I'll let your girl, so I can at least pitch the movie to you and see if you're interested. And you ain't got to take the movie, but whatever. So after they interviewed Martin, and they did their little recap on Eddie, they ended up interviewing one of my other favorites, Mr. Morgan Freeman, who's known for things such as Driving Miss Daisy, Lean on Me, Shawshank Redemption, Glory, Bruce Almighty, Unforgiven, $1 Million Baby, and a whole host of other things. I also found out that Morgan Freeman played a pimp. He played a pimp. Crazy. But anyway, but Morgan, he talks about how actors typically, most good actors only want to be known for being good at what they do. They're not wanting to be known for a whole host of other things, just good at what they do. Just like a normal 9 to 5 employee. One thing that he mentioned, though, was about an exercise that he used to do when he was in theater, which was called a trust exercise. And basically, in this exercise, it was a relax and give it up type of exercise. And he stated that the best actors and actresses would just give it up. They would just give it up. And he said he believes that's the part and the secret to success in being an actor is just giving it up, meaning giving your all, just releasing it into the character. And one thing that Kevin Hart mentioned about Morgan was that he watched Morgan Freeman and Lean on Me, and he felt like Morgan really captivated that character and really captivated that movie. He said the fact to see a black supportive teacher who loves the kids and supports the kids and advocates for the kids, and to see him fight for the kids, he said that moved him seeing and Lean on Me. And Don Cheadle was the one who actually brought up how people underestimated Morgan's ability to be talented. He's also the one who brought up that Morgan Freeman played a pimp in some movies, and to show his versatility that most people weren't used to seeing. And Lawrence Fishburne also gave Morgan his flowers as well. He Lawrence Fishburne talked about how he played, not Morgan Freeman, but how Lawrence himself, he played a cowboy on Pee Wee Herman House show, and he was saying that people would try to clown him for playing that character, but all he seen was just a man going to do what he got paid to do, and also what he just loves to do. So he disregarded it. He brushed it off his shoulder. He kept on bouncing. He kept on doing what he needed to do. Well, Lawrence also mentioned that since he didn't allow that to phase him, it helped push his career. Like I said, Martin Sheen told him earlier that he was a good actor and he's good at what he does, so it boosted his confidence. So he kept going. Well, Lawrence was saying that John Singleton actually brought the role for Trey's father in Boys in the Hood to him. It was written for Lawrence, basically. Because John Singleton brought it to him and said, "Hey, I want you to play this character." And Lawrence was like, "Get the script done. I'll read the script and we'll talk." And then the rest is history. Boys in the Hood is a classic, no matter what you say. So, speaking of Boys in the Hood, they end up interviewing Morris Chestnut, who was known for Two Can Play That Game, Boys in the Hood, The Brothers, The Inkwell, The Best Man, and the list goes on and on for him as well. He talks about Boys in the Hood, and he discussed the evolution of what Boys in the Hood did for him, right? Well, Reginald ends up, they kind of interview Morris Chestnut for a split second, and then they jump to Reginald discussing how the film industry has changed, how the style of filming has evolved, and films are becoming more personal and more fresh and more, more directed towards one demographic but open to the world, if that makes sense. Well, they interviewed someone named Miss Robbie Reed. She's a casting director for films such as Poetic Justice, Malcolm, Do the Right Thing, I'm Going to Get You Sucker on Jungle Fever. Um, they interviewed her, then they also interviewed another another casting director, casting director producer Ruben Cannon, who's known for things such as Get on the Bus, Diary of a Mad Black Woman, Why Did I Get Married, I Could Do Bad All by Myself, and Madea Goes to Jail. They both were interviewed and they were talking about the casting process for Black America versus White America, basically. Um, but scratch that. Let's jump right back into the interviewees, right? So after they interviewed Morris, and I knew it was going to follow suit, they ended up interviewing Ice Cube next. And Ice Cube is known for things such as Are We There Yet, Boys in the Hood, Higher Learning, Barbershop, Ride Along, the entire Friday series, and so many other films. But Ice Cube talked about how he felt like he got a lucky shot at getting the opportunity to work on Boys in the Hood with John Singleton because John Singleton gave him the game. He told him, he said, "Listen, there's not going to be too many other Boys in the Hoods out here for you. You need to, you have the ability to write. You need to get in that lab. You need to get it going and get the writing. And if it wasn't for John Singleton, we probably would have never had a Friday, a Are We There Yet, a Barbershop series, and we probably would have never got to see Ice Cube and Higher Learning. Who knows? But Ice Cube took what John Singleton said and ran with it, and now we have these dope classics from Ice Cube as well, and it's amazing to me. But he really embrace John Singleton on him, letting him know that because of your vivid imagination and your ability to make things vivid through your raps lyrics, you have the ability to do the same with these films. So you gotta navigate it towards that because you're gonna have to navigate things for your perspective and for your likeliness because there's not gonna be another John Singleton, there's not gonna be another Boys in the Hood. And before they interviewed the next person, there was a small intermission where Marlon had jumped back in and he discussed about Batman. And he was saying when he goes on to most of his auditions, he gets at least 97% of his auditions. And he was saying that one audition that he got, he shot the part for, he did everything he was supposed to do, which was for Batman. And he was supposed to play Robin in Batman. And unfortunately, they cut his part out completely. And Marlon found out not only from them airing Batman, but also that when they did the sequel, he seen that he really was no longer Robin because they gave it to another person, another white man, and basically told Marlon that Robin was not the Robin they were looking for, and they took that character out. Where and I will say, whereas Marlon might have been hurt by that, and which he was, it was a blessing that they took him out because we got Marlon to be able to be as fired up and energized to do the shit he's doing now and the shit he did after that. Even though and like I said, Marlon mentioned it discouraged him. But I remember he said John Singleton had let him know, like, and I believe his brother Keenan mentioned this to him too, but John Singleton was the one that mentioned it to him, that he asked him, he said, what do you want to do? And Marlon was like, I'm gonna be an actor. And he said, John told him, no, you're gonna be a black actor. You need to get your black ass in this black actor world, because ain't no black actors in Hollywood like that. You gotta come on this side, and what he meant was, you gotta get with your black people and make this shit work. Make Hollywood see you. And that's what I had this conversation last night with that's what I feel like Marlon and Sean knew that they needed to do, and they did what needed to be done. But I'll get into that conversation a little later. After Marlon, though, Don Cheadle talked about how it was very common for black actors, male or female, to maybe be working on a film one day and then right back to the unemployment line, or working in somebody's, I don't know, restaurant as a waiter the next day. It was very common for black actors to be back and forth like that, back and forth, back and forth. And it was as almost if acting was a side job for most black actors. Um, After that, they gave Denzel a lot of flowers, a lot of flowers. Quentin Tarantino and Jamie, they talked about the strength that Denzel Washington brings to the acting world, and the journey, the performance, the way he stood on business when he was either on that film or on that stage. He walked in his blackness no matter what, and he didn't give a damn who didn't like it. He was going to be Denzel Washington, or Denzel, because it ain't even Denzel, it's Denzel, as he so openly like to tell people. But right after they gave that man his flowers, they also interviewed that man. And Denzel Washington is known for multiple things: Training Day, The Equalizer, Man on Fire, American Gangster, Malcolm X, and Glory, and a whole host of other films. Mr. Washington talked about how his plan for acting when he first became an actor was to make $650 a week on Broadway, because he started out on stage first, not on films. Yeah, that was his plan. I'm going to be a Broadway actor, make my $650 a week, and go home. Well, he talks about the difference between Broadway / the theater and filming, and how they're very different. Because on Broadway and / the theater, it's the actors' world. It's their, when that curtain comes up, it's the actors. It's their world. They make it is what it is, and they make it do what it do on that stage. It's their world. You're in their world when you're sitting in that seat watching them on stage. But when you go in front of a camera and you're being directed by a film director, it's the director's film. You're just acting in it. You're bringing their vision to life, not yours. And Denzel was the first one to mention this, though. He said, being number one on the call sheet doesn't mean you're number one on the pay list. But no matter what, he still did the best he needed to do on stage. And I fucked with that. There was a split second before they interviewed the next person where Jamie was telling us that Denzel literally gave them the game. They came to Jamie's house to have a little get together, and Jamie asked Denzel to come and talk to all the young black male actors and just feed them what he could. And Denzel just did just that. So I still stand on what I said. Denzel, if you see this, feed me. Feed me. For sure. I just think it's dope. So far, it's been dope. I got 3 more men to talk about, and then I'm almost done. So after that, they interviewed my one of my back in the day crushes, Idris Elba, known for several films: This Christmas, Hobbs and Shaw, Thor, Beast on No Nation, American Gangster, The Harder They Fall, The Suicide Squad. And he talks about coming from where he comes from, which is Britain, and he's of British descent. And when he told his parents he wanted to act, his father basically was like, "Nah, Jack, it ain't no, you know, that it might not work out for you, son." And Idris was very determined to prove that he was capable. So he left, came to America, and realized that about the time that he popped into America and started his acting career, black chocolate men were on the sexy list. So he just so happened to come to America at the right time because he was deemed a sexy black man. So yes, it helped him. He's one of the very few on this list that actually um, was shown with sex appeal, but actually had talent. Not just a sexy face, but had talent. And he got blessed because of his sex appeal. It allowed him to explore and showcase his talents while being sexy. Uh, so most of his career, he was viewed as the sexy sex symbol, and he said he ran with it. Why not? That's your bread and butter. But ultimately, his talent outshined his sex appeal, in my opinion, because the nigga's getting older. Well, after they interviewed him, they interviewed Taye Diggs, who's known for things like How Stella Got Her Groove Back, Brown Sugar, The Wood, The Best Man, and a whole host of other things. Diggs talked about how when he became a movie star, he just assumed that shit was just gonna take off. That people was gonna recognize him, know who he was, and just be falling to his feet. Well, he got humbled real quick when he seen people didn't give a fuck who he was and didn't know who he was. So that pumped him to be like, okay, well, I see all these other white counterparts with their sponsored deals, their this, that, which made him want to feed and pushing the hard line and calling everybody to get what he felt like he needed to get done, just to find out that they'll tell you yes on the phone, but once you hang up, they not doing that shit for you. They don't care. You're getting paid to do what they want you to do, not what you want them to do. So they don't care. And after that, they went back to Will Smith. And Will was talking about how basically Arnold Schwarzenegger and what's the other cat's name? Steven Seagal, not Steven Seagal. Arnold Schwarzenegger and what is that man's name? I'm drawing a blank. It don't matter. He ain't black anyway. The point is, he was talking to Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's really who he's talking to. But he had mentioned that Arnold had told him that, in order to be a big movie star, means you have, and if you want to go global, not even just United States, but if you want to go global, you got to go overseas. You have to go overseas. You have to. And it was this big myth that black movies weren't, popping overseas, so most black people wouldn't go. So Will learned very quickly that he had an advantage over the entire industry because nobody would go overseas. So he went overseas, which is how Will Smith became a global household name. He took a leap of faith, and instead of it biting him in the ass, it put gold in his hand. And Will took off. Martin talked about how originally Will Smith was not the original pick in his mind for Mike in Bad Boys. It was actually Eddie. He wanted to work with Eddie on Bad Boys. And Martin said his sister was like, nah, you might want to get that to Will Smith. And big ups to Martin's sister because that was a good ass idea. We thank you for that. We thank you for that. Thank you for speaking up because although Eddie is a tremendous actor, um, I honestly think that Will was a better fit for that role. And I'm grateful that that's how that went because the Bad Boys franchise, the way we see it, I couldn't envision it with Eddie in it, to be honest. You know, they did great together in life, but I just couldn't see Eddie being in the Bad Boys series. And I don't know if it would have went to a 2, a 3, and a 4. I don't know. Um, Martin also, not Martin, I'm sorry. Will, I called him Martin, I'm sorry. Will mentioned that he met with Colin Powell one day and asked Colin Powell what it took to be a general. And Colin Powell told him that a general is basically someone who's good at a lot of stuff, but not great at shit. So it's the general concept of being generally good at most things, being able to act, direct, produce, write, and set the lights up and set the camera up, know how to work it, like having the general consensus of doing all of that, so you can never be put in a box. That is what a general is. And like I said, Will took that advice and ran off with it. And Jamie and Lawrence and everyone else would give Will his flowers for taking that initiative and being one of the first in the black males film industry to actually take that leap of faith and with it. Well, the 18th person to get interviewed was Dwayne Johnson, known for Fast and the Furious, presents Hobbs and Shaw, Moana, Black Adam, Central Intelligence, San Andreas, Jumanji, and a whole host of other things. If most people don't know that Dwayne is also known as The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He's an ex-wrestler turned movie star. And The Rock said, he mentioned that he had did a whole host of films, Gridiron Gang, is it Walking Tall? I think it's called Walking Tall. He did a whole host of other films, and he said a lot of those films didn't really put him where he wanted to be. And he said he came into the industry trying to emulate and mimic Will Smith and tried to do what Will did basically and take off, but he realized that to the industry he was too big. He was too jockey. So he tried to change up his image by even trying to remove The Rock from his name because he thought that would help, till he realized that he still needed to be Dwayne The Rock Johnson because trying to conform to other people just wasn't going to work for him. And once he learned to love himself, he stated his career kind of took off from there. Well, you know, everyone in this business has shared very similar things. And after they interviewed The Rock, the final man they interviewed was Daniel Kaluuya. He's known for the Judas and the Black Messiah, which I did an episode on that one as well. I'll put it somewhere over here. And Queen and Slim, Nope, Black and Panther, Get Out, and Sicario, I think that's how you say it. And they opened up by asking him who was his Mount Rushmore. His Mount Rushmore was Denzel, Sidney, Samuel Jackson, and Jamie Foxx. That was his Mount Rushmore. And it's interesting because all four of those men share some very great similarities. They all body the characters that you give them. They all bring that character to life. They all make you see it and feel it when they're on that screen. All of them. There's not out of all four men that you could pick for Mount Rushmore, that was one hell of a pick. And he also just talked about how they pretty much gave the game to them in their hand. And it was just up to them to take what they did and learn from it and push forward with it. Jamie had made a joke that you knew if your movie did good based on going through TSA. If you go through TSA and they clowning you, your movie was ass. If you go through TSA and they give you your props, that movie was dope. That's basically what Jamie tells you. Um, a lot of love came to Jamie for his work on Ray. Eddie Murphy really, really, truly, truly was showing Jamie some love. He said Ray is in his top five of top five all favorite movies. Um, Will also shows him love about being 100% multi-talented type of actor, singer, musician, and comedian, and all around just man. Dwayne also shows him his love. Uh, Michael B. Jordan shows Jamie some love. They all just kind of was giving Jamie his praise, and that's one thing about this documentary that I love is that all these black men, all 19 of these black men, showed each other some love in some variation without being prompt to talk about said person. They all just instantly had a name, like to go to. Um, John Boyga was very appreciative to almost everyone. There he didn't name drop a whole lot, but you could tell that he was very appreciative. One thing that they all did show and discuss was about Chadwick Boseman, which R.I.P. to Mr. Chadwick. And they all talked about how the world was hurt, but the black filming industry was really hurt. Of course, his family was the most hurt by losing him. But in the filming world, the black filming world was really destroyed by his untimely passing. I honestly can say this: if Mr. Chadwick was still alive, we would have an abundance of great work from him to see. One thing that Daniel Kaluuya brought up was about how a great synopsis can make you want to play a character, and I think that is very true. Because I think if you can envision a story based on just a synopsis, and if you don't know what a synopsis is, it's something that a film creator or writer would do to give you a captivating understanding of what the film is supposed to be about. It's usually 2 to 3 sentences, maybe 4 sentences describing the scenario, the film, and captivating you in 2 seconds. And I agree with that. A good synopsis can make you want to do a film. Because to be honest with you, most directors don't want to read the entire goddamn script unless they wrote it. And then even then, they don't want to read it. And I can attest to that. I've written two films not films. I'm sorry, 2 manuscripts. And the only reason why I would reread them is because I would have to make sure that you're doing your damn job. By the end, you get to see that all 19 of these men shared something very similar. And whereas, like I said, Idris didn't necessarily have to struggle when it came to getting maybe gigs. But he still had to struggle to become the it man, the number one on the call sheet, because he was number 56 for a while. He was just only listed as a man, the man number one, and he finally started moving up the ranks and getting a name and getting getting noticed, So they all shared that struggle of climbing to number one on the call sheet. Honestly, a lot of them understand that it's their duty to make headway for the next generation. They all understand that. They all get that is what they are set to do and need to do. And they basically all stated that you just need to make sure you look out for your peers. And understand it's your responsibility to grab your brother's hand and keep and bring them with you. So that's basically what happened on first on the call sheet, the mail edition. Now, usually I'll give you guys some notes, but I really don't have any notes to give you because I kind of gave you the notes within the documentary portion, if you will. But one thing that I learned from this documentary was that in this industry, black male actors struggle just as much as the black female actresses do. Um, it's just that in most cases, the males will take off faster than the women will. But that doesn't mean they won't experience scrutiny. That doesn't mean that they won't experience disrespect. That doesn't mean they won't experience being number 56 on the call sheet for 5 years before they be called number one on the call sheet, or 10 years. But I learned that you can't give up because you're number 56 on the call sheet. You can't. You got to keep trying, especially if it's what you really want. So, with that being said, concluding the film is going to be a little bit different because this is a documentary. So instead of me rating it, 10 out of 10, I highly recommend like I normally would, instead we're going to rate it at 25 out of 25 based off of 5 categories that I have coming up with. First one is storyline. I gave it a 5 because the documentary was about being a black man in Hollywood and what it took to become number one on the call sheet, the star, the it man, the go-to guy, the face, the household name that they have become, and all of them did that. Every single one of them, that was all 19 of them, became some type of household name, whether it was just for a couple months or it was for multiple years. But they all did it at some point, and they all are still making headway and still making their rounds into this Hollywood world. The next one was cast. I gave it a 5 because they picked very, very bigly diverse groups. I mean, because you got some black men who didn't take long to become the leading man, and you got some that it took them a long time to become the leading man. But they're all from different levels of life. You got your Denzel, your Lawrence, your Morgans, and then you got your Jamies, your Idrises, your mine just went blank, your Ice Cubes, and then you got your Daniel Kaluuya's and your John Boyegas that are fairly new to the game, and Michael B. Jordan is kinda in between new to the game and almost mid-season of the game, if you will. The next one was relativeness. I gave it a 3. I'm not a man, so some things that they were discussing in here I couldn't connect to relatively because I'm not a man, such as the aspect of being a father and trying to work this business. Because Dwayne mentioned that his first marriage crumbled because he couldn't balance married life and fatherhood life with his career. He couldn't balance it right. But his second time around, he got it right. I can't resonate with that because as a woman being a mother, I don't think I'd be able to have a choice. I'd have to balance life. At least that's how I was raised, that I wouldn't have a choice. I have to balance life. And that's just how I am as a person. I would balance life between my career and my children and then also my spouse. So, there's that. I don't really have a big relativeness to it. I applaud these men for their confidence level and their ability to go towards and direct towards their dreams, but I can't say I have a real strong relativeness to them in that sense of being a black man, but I do have a strong relativeness to them for being an artist and creative and wanting to chase after their goals. That's why I gave them a 3. Enjoyableness, I gave them a 4. The men were very long-winded, especially comparing it to part one to part two. The men were very long-winded, which is why it took me so long to do this one that I see now, because it was a lot that I had to take down. But the men also were very intriguing and had very great stories and brought very great visuals to the filming life and in the filming industry, and opened up about the vulnerabilities of being a black man in the filming industry, in the filming world, So, enjoyableness, I had to give him a 4. And then the final one was the learning level. And I had to give them a 5 on learning level because, once again, if you understand and you're interested in this type of business, this type of world, to hear the battles and the upside downs from a male's perspective is very opening. It's optimizing. It's being able to hear a leading man that was not a leading man when he first started tell you, I worked my ass off to become a household name, and this is the people I watched, and this is how I learned how to do it, by watching them. Or hearing Jamie Foxx say Denzel sat at a table and had a full blown conversation with the black men in that room, and gave them the game. As Denzel will say, I'm from around the way, I'm leaving with something. And that's what he wanted them to do, leave with something. To hear that, it's just beautiful. um it's just a lot from the men that honestly you would have to watch for yourself, because me trying to explain some of the men's moments, it's only captivating to people who are interested in this type of work, to say the least. That's who this is going to be interesting for. Because other people who are not necessarily interested in this life, but maybe interested in hearing their stories, and their accomplishments, and their flowers that they choose to give out, that might be the most attentive part for most people. So with that, they got a 22 out of 25. Not bad for a documentary rating, and the new rating scale for movies with Tay. This one was very interesting, to say the least. I enjoyed it. I can't wait to bring y'all part two. Because when I bring y'all part two, you're going to be mind blown by the ladies. This part two is about the ladies. But if you made it all the way to the end, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and share it for me. I'd gladly appreciate it. Please, please, please make sure you hit the like button after you watched it all the way through. Make sure you leave me a comment. Leave me the filming thing, like the action. Leave me that to let me know you made it all the way to the end. And tell me what movie you'd like for me to do next. I always gladly appreciate you guys for tuning in with your girl week after week. Don't forget, after episode 60, Movies with Tay will come to a hiatus, and then we'll jump into TV shows with Tay. I haven't fully mapped out how I want to do that 100%. It's going to be very different than Movies with Tay, as that one's going to be more conversational based. And maybe lean more towards specific characters, specific episodes, and specific things that I might want to discuss. But the point is, your host with the most, the rotating the code, is always going to bring you something every Friday on this channel. Keep in mind, the second channel is coming sometime soon. Also, you can catch your girl on Twitch and TikTok live. Just click on the links in my bio and find me. I'm bringing something new. I'm jumping into every venture while I have the ability and the time to. I don't have any kids, so I have time to put effort into all of this. So that way, when it starts to rocking and rolling, I'll have a team that can support me. So when I do have kids, I'll be able to be mommy and still do what I can do. I appreciate y'all for rocking with me, supporting me. Remember to always argue with your mama, because I ain't going to argue with you. Be peaceful, stay blessed, and peace out.